Hello, Internet. We're here to discuss Dancing with the Stars. I am Daniel Montgomery, and I'm here with Cordell Martin. We are from goldderby.com. We predict entertainment awards and also reality television awards, or not awards so much as like the real trophy for Dancing with the Stars, which, I mean, Simone Biles is going to win, obviously. We know that. Day one. No, she was just eliminated. As we're recording this, the semifinals were last night, and Simone Biles was eliminated. And you and I think, were both officially predicting David Ross, but we definitely talked last week about, could Simone be at risk? Could Rashad be at risk? We both thought, David Ross's fan base is really powerful, so we both had that sinking feeling. I know we were chatting last night as the results were coming down. It's like, oh, are they going to screw them? Are they going to screw Simone Biles or Rashad Jennings out of a spot? So when it came down to David and Simone as the final two in Jeopardy, were you thinking at that point, based on how they decided to reveal that Simone is safe, or Simone is gone?
Yeah, to your point, it was very interesting on how they, announced each couple that was safe and moving to the finals. As we talked last week, I always thought it was going to be David that they were going to announce first, and everyone's just like, oh, Lord, here we go. But once it came down to Simone and David, I just had flashbacks of Heather when she was in the same position. I'm like, this season should just be called Deja Vu, because you get a perfect score, you have your best night, and it's like, okay, goodbye, your journey ends. So I was kind of surprised, but not surprised, just for the simple fact that she didn't have a big enough gap in terms of her scores between her and David to really, overcome his fan base. And then also, I read that there was just mixed feelings on her whole comment to Carrie Ann.
I thought the same thing. That when Tom Bergeron noted, it's like, oh, you're not smiling as much as you used to, and she said, like, smiling doesn't win gold medals. I think she said that as a defense mechanism because she was feeling vulnerable and she wanted to come across as confident.
Yeah.
But it did come off as a little bit smug. In the moment, I don't think it was intended that way, and I don't think she is that way. I mean, she's such a bright sunshine that I don't think she would have said something like that unless she was actually just kind of upset with herself and upset with how she was doing and that sort of thing. And we saw that, of course, in the clip package where she was having a lot of trouble, whether or not she's done as well as she could do, and whether or not that might just be as good as she could do. Which, of course, for an perfectionistic Olympic gold medalist, not being able to push past a limitation and rise to a certain occasion was kind of devastating. So I definitely took it in that spirit, but I can see where audiences are like, so you're that special and gold medalist and okay. But yeah, I was a little bit worried about that too. I thought if David was going home, David Ross were going home, I think they would have announced Simone safe, because I think it's a little bit more plausible and a little bit more suspenseful that Rashad might have fallen in terms of the viewer votes. I think everybody kind of assumed that Simone had the support. So by putting her against David, everyone is like, okay, David's going home. And then they announced Simone, and it's a big surprise. So when it was down to those two, I was thinking, I was like, this is not looking good.
Exactly. And, it's unfortunate, but I just feel that since the start of this season, the judges have really put a lot of pressure on the female celebrities, and really, just study them under a microscope, especially with Heather. And then, of course, Nancy had the whole issue like Simone of not being the perfect one or the gold standard that everyone else is trying to follow. And I think for a lot of those women, it took the joy out of the show for them. And I think that also played into how they were, their stories were presented in the packages week after week. Because if you look at the final three, rarely did you see any issues with them, with drama with their partners, or them, you know, having a diva moment or any meltdowns. All three of them really embraced the journey of the show and what the show's all about. And viewers were able to connect to that and really support them, as opposed to the other contestants who may have felt like they weren't the best dancer or there was too much pressure on them.
Or if they, you know, if any of these finalists had a bad moment, we did not see them.
Exactly.
And I'm sure, you know, I mean, they train like what 5-6 hours a day, you know, every day. I'm sure, you know, Rashad and Normani and David had a moment of just like, screw this, this sucks, I'm out of here, or something like that. You know, just, I mean, even in passing or something like that. But we never saw it. We saw it with Simone. We saw it with. We saw it even with like Bonner and
yeah.
You know, so, but we never ever really saw it with certainly not David Ross, and you think he would be kind of frustrated because he's
a
place where he is. No offense to David Ross, in terms of just straight up dancing ability, he's been out of his league for 2 or 3 weeks now. So, you know, you'd think that would prompt a little bit of a, you know, kind of a frustrated, you know, he can't get over the hump. But it's Simone Biles who has gymnastics moves named after her, who is the one who is worried that she can't push past her limitations.
Yeah, it's very interesting, just the way that the show kind of paints people's journey, you know, because I think also what hurt Simone is that, you know, Lori just won the season before, you know, so it's very odd. I mean, not very odd, but very rare that 2 gymnasts, you know, would win back to back. And then also she's not a rhythmic, you know, dancer or gymnast like Lori or Nastia. You know, they're known more for their rhythmic gymnast ability, as opposed to Allie, Raisman, and Simone was more known for their athletic ability with gymnastics. So
yeah, and it's it's interesting. I feel like I want the judges to reevaluate how they score going forward, because as you mentioned, the women were under a microscope, and to be fair, they kind of deserved a little bit of that scrutiny because they did cast, you know, Heather Morris was a professional dancer. Simone Biles was this Olympic gymnast. Nancy Kerrigan was a figure skater who's had experience with choreography on like a tiny blade. So you know, on the ground should be relatively easy. And Normani, of course, has had previous dance experience, and she dances for a living also with Fifth Harmony. So the women, they did sort of deserve a kind of extra scrutiny, but at the same time, if you're going to, like, even in the semifinals, if you're going to say to Normani during her first dance, okay, this is the semifinals, so we're going to be super nitpicky. We saw this tiny, tiny little thing, so we're going to dock you a point. Then in the second round, David Ross gives, you know, a solid performance for David Ross, but it certainly wasn't as close to perfect as Normani's was in the first round, and he got 9s across the board as well. So according to them, they were equal, even though obviously they weren't. So it's that kind of A for effort thing that, you know, combined with the extra scrutiny on the female dancers, that opens the door for America to bridge that gap with their votes. I mean, because if David Ross had been scored relative to what the other dancers really did, he would not have gotten straight 9s last night. So
no, it's true, and that they need to really stay consistent with their scoring and judging. Because to your point, they probably assumed, like probably majority of America, that David Ross was going to go home. So let's just give him his best scores of the night, pat him on the back, thank him for participating, move on to the final 3, move on to the other 3. And once again, now they're in a bit of a pickle, because what I think there's maybe a 5 or 6 point difference between David and Normani separates them.
6.
So once again, I mean, I'm not sure as to how scoring is going to work with the final 3. I don't know if they're going to count next week's scores on Monday with last week's scores and viewers' votes. So we shall see how that works. So potentially we could see David maybe end up the second place.
We could. I do think that now that we're in the finals and the judges know what they have done, I do think we'll see, because I mean the finals are relatively easy in terms of I mean certainly difficult in terms of the amount that each performer has to do, but the judging is relatively easy. If you can stay on your feet, you can generally pick up some tens. But David Ross, I feel like we could see Normani and Rashad give tens across the board, and then just to kind of pull, like, anchor him down a little bit. There might be just like straight nines for David, no matter what he does. Because David hasn't gotten a single 10 this season yet. So on the one hand, they might think he's due. It's like, okay, let's give him a 10. But then, you're going to cause the same problem. He's going to win the Mirror Trophy by accident. So. Do you think there should be a judge's veto? I wrote, like, as soon as I watched last night's show, this having happened two or three times now. Nancy Kerrigan wasn't that big an upset, but in terms of she had a higher score than some of the people who stayed longer than her. But Nancy Kerrigan, Heather Morris, and Simone Biles being eliminated earlier than their level of danceability would have indicated. Do you think the judges should institute a veto to say, like, oh no, we never intended for Simone Biles to go home, she stays, or Heather Morris, she stays?
Yeah, I'm thinking either like a veto, or maybe up until a certain point, maybe it's like the top 5, maybe doing a dance off between the lowest 2 vote getters. So that way it still feels like that America has a choice. But then if they know that, okay, Heather's in the bottom against Bonner, we can try to hopefully right that wrong, as opposed to the judges having their say as to who they want to save. And then America may feel like they're being manipulated into, well, I have to support this contestant because the judges want to save them, when they could realistically go home the next week or 2 weeks later. So I think a dance-off would probably be more fitting.
A dance-off would actually be interesting, because you would get that situation where it's like, okay, the problem is that they never reveal who the bottom 2 actually are. They, you just know the person who goes home is the one who had the lowest combination. But after that, they always say it's like the couples in Jeopardy aren't necessarily the bottom 2 couples, because they do that just for drama's sake. So they could pick, and they could pick someone out of the audience and say, you're in Jeopardy this week, based on your votes and judges' scores. So we never really know. And I understand why they do that, because you see it on other reality shows like American Idol, when who is at the bottom one week. No matter what they do the next week, if they have a core of fans, they're going to support them no matter what they do next week, because they know they're at risk. They know they're vulnerable. So you don't necessarily want to interfere with what the audience knows. They should just be able to vote with whatever information that they have, which is how well they danced. But at the same time, it would be helpful a little bit to say, you know what, maybe we should, like, if maybe we would have found out that Heather had been in Jeopardy, or like really had maybe been the next lowest person in one of the previous weeks before she went home, and then America would have been like, whoa, why was she ranked so low? We need to vote for her. And that might have righted some wrongs as well.
Yeah, and I think also that was probably like the case for Normani, because remember, she was in Jeopardy, I think Disney Week. And so everyone was kind of like, what, Normani? And then I think that's really when she kicked it into gear, her and Val, like, okay, we're just one performance away that if it's not up to a certain standard and forgettable, we could go home. So I think that was definitely a wake-up call for her and her fans to really rally behind her and push her to the finals.
So what are you most looking forward to next week? I mean, I really liked Simone Biles. When she was eliminated, she was really positive about it. I think she was happy to get those perfect scores, to prove to herself that, okay, I have the ability to push past this. And so even though she was eliminated, she got to have that moment of success where she's like, okay, I'm as good as the best. But she did say, I'm going to be in the finals, in the finale anyway, which of course all the couples come back and do something for the finale. So she'll be back, which will be nice, but she won't get to do a freestyle. That's the thing I'm going to miss the most.
I was looking forward to that. And then to your point, I felt that she was at ease with her elimination. I think after last week, I just sensed that she was over the whole show, the whole Dance with Stars experience. She's like, I had my fun in the sun. I'm done. And, you know, she was just at ease. Like, it is what it is. I didn't win, but I'm going to support my friends. And we're all good here. So, yeah. But in terms of what I'm looking forward to for next week, really looking to see what Val's going to do with Normani for their freestyle. Sometimes Val has been a hit or miss with his freestyles. Usually they go off really well and really showcases his partner. And then sometimes it's just a little disappointing. For example, like Zendaya. You know, I thought Zendaya was an amazing dancer, but she did like a hip hop routine that was cute. But then you had Kelly Pickler, who had this emotional, contemporary, lyrical routine that really stood out and connected with the viewers and helped her win the Mirrorball Trophy. So I think if Val really taps into the emotional connection that Normani has been delivering to the audiences these past 2 weeks, she's really going to be really tough to beat if that's the freestyle that they deliver. I think Rashad is going to do something light, fun, and energetic. That's where he really shines. I mean, he does also shine with the more vulnerable dances, but I think you get him in this wheelhouse and add like a Bruno Mars track, he's going to shut the place down. And David, David's just there for the ride. I think he's just like, I don't know how I got in the finals. It is what it is. We're just going to enjoy it. And I think it'll just be great just to see him, you know, just enjoy this moment and have a blast. So,
yeah, I think this is one of those seasons where you see like a finalist like David Ross, who, you know, just no matter, like, you know, towards the end of that run, they're like last place every week, but they're still advancing because their fans just aren't going to let them go. And we saw that with Alex Scarlatos, the American hero. He wasn't bad, but he wasn't like a great dancer. And you know, he had all that American hero cred, so he went through. Noah Galloway had a lot of physical limitations, obviously, because, you know, he was an amputee. He had lost a leg and lost an arm. Also an American hero, and so that really affected his range of movement. But they weren't going to let him fall out of the competition. He was that inspirational contestant, and I don't even begrudge him that one. I mean, given what he had to deal with just to be as good as he was. You know, and Candace Cameron Bure, you know, was another one who wasn't great, but in a different, you know, she had that, you know, Christian contingent that always seems to push people through. Sadie Robertson also had that, where, you know, they kind of push them through week after week, even if they're not level. And David Ross, I think, is that, but we often see that ends up in third place. I think Sadie might have been second.
to Alfonso.
Gotcha. Yeah, and so, but other than that, they you know, America usually comes to its senses and goes like, oh no, we need to. This is third. This is a good third, but this is third. Hopefully.
Yeah. So, do you think Rashad could pull out an upset over Normani?
I think he could. I think certainly the if they combine this week and next week, certainly the you know, they laid the groundwork for it, because Rashad got a higher score overall by a point than Normani, which I think is a little bit dubious to me. I thought he was good, but you know, I don't think he's ever been at her level, including this week. So, you know, really, I think Rashad could, and I wouldn't even be that mad if he didn't. But if you can't have Heather in the finals, if you can't have Simone in the finals, then for me, it just really has to be Normani. Like, she's the only real choice left, you know, for the win. I would have been thrilled. I thought, you know, all this season I've been thinking Rashad is a really good third place, and now he's, you know, he could finish as high as second, and because he's going to have a buffer of scores, he's going to almost definitely score higher than David Ross. So he'll have a higher spot when, you know, America votes for the winner. So he could pull out a win as a result of that.
Yeah. And I mean, just also just looking at, you know, the history of the finals, and different type of contestants. I believe Rashad is the 9th football player to appear in the finals. And if he's to win, he'll be the 4th football player after Emmitt Smith, Hines Ward, and Donald Driver. And then for Normani, she's the 3rd member of a female band or female group to appear in the finals. And if she wins, she'll be the 2nd person to win behind Nicole Scherzinger. And of course, David's the first baseball, player to appear. So it'll just be very interesting to see who will be joining the ranks of the other former champions.
And it's interesting because Normani, not just being a member of a girl group, but being a recording artist, if you broaden that out, then you've got Kelly Pickler, then you've even got Amber Riley you can consider because she's a singer in addition to being on Glee. Maya was a finalist also, so recording artists also have a really long storied history of doing well too. Nick Carter even. So it's really, football players do really well, recording artists do really well. Which one? I think Normani will almost certainly get the higher score on the finals, if not them being tied, them getting all like maybe 10s or something. If they decide to do that. I do think they'll keep Rashad maybe a couple of points below Normani, unless Normani falls down or something.
And knowing her, she'll make it spectacular, and I'm like, oh my god, that was amazing.
Into the choreography.
Exactly.
Lift so magical that even Carrie Ann Inaba won't deduct a point for it. Well, with that, I look forward to discussing the finals with you next week. Actually, not at this time, because at this time next week will be the actual finale. So we'll both be watching that. But we will definitely connect next week to talk about these crazy results and the amazing mirror ball champion David Ross.
Oh, don't speak that in existence, please don't.
It's like I said, I think I said last week, this is that kind of year where, Trump gets into office, Adele beats Beyonce, the Patriots win the Super Bowl, and David Ross wins the Mirror Ball Trophy.
And the Cubs won the World Series last year, too, so stranger things have happened before.
And that was like a century's curse.
Exactly.
He's got like a shrunken mummy's paw or like a monkey's paw somewhere that he prays to, and that's what's getting him this far in the competition. Okay, so thank you so much for joining me, and thank you to everyone watching this. We will see you next week, and we will see a mirror ball champion next week as well.